Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, October 11th. If you are just tuning in, we just went over our NFL Week 6 game picks. In this segment, we're taking a look at college football, the Week 7 game picks, and what is the best slate of college games so far. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use the super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, October 11th. But like I was saying, finishing off our show today here, talking all about college football Week 7. We have some of the biggest matchups so far on the college slate. The biggest matchup of the season this week between number 2 and number 3, Ohio State and Oregon. We'll get to that one later on. We're going to start off with a matchup on Friday. Today, the biggest matchup of the day as number 16 Utah travels to Arizona State. And I know on paper it sounds like one of those games that Utah should dominate, because they should. But without Cam Rising, that team is awful. The Arizona State offense, I think, has a chance to put up some points on this Utah defense. I know that is a big ask. For them. But Utah, I think, coming in without Cam Rising, I just can't see them continuing to win football games. And I think Arizona State is the one that's going to shock them this year. I think Arizona State pulls off the huge upset here, wins 23-20. Up next, we are transitioning over to Saturday, the weekend games. A not ranked matchup in the Big Ten, but between two solid teams in Wisconsin and Rutgers. Rutgers coming off of a brutal loss against Nebraska last week. Nebraska, a good football team. Rutgers doesn't quite have that juice offensively, but I think defensively they have enough to shut down a team like Wisconsin. Wisconsin has been close. They're coming off of a big victory, an upset victory over USC last week. A top 11 win. That is huge for them, but I don't think Wisconsin really is that great of a team. I just think USC has some obvious weaknesses that Michigan exploited, which is just run the ball better than they do. And that's how you win the game. I think Rutgers can take down this Wisconsin team. They're favored by 2. I think they win 21-26. Then we get Washington, another team coming off of a huge upset. I guess it's technically not an upset. They were favored in that game, but they come off beating a top 10 opponent in Michigan. Michigan falls very far in this week's poll, but they're traveling to Iowa here. Another Big Ten battle for them. Washington, again, coming off of that big game, I think they're due for a letdown. I think Washington's a solid team, but Iowa's defense, we saw them shut down Ohio State for 2.5 quarters last week. That is huge. That is not an easy task, and I think since they were able to do that against Ohio State, they'll be able to do that pretty much same thing against Washington. Their offense is slightly better. It's not a world beater by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think Iowa is good enough, favored by 3, to win this game at home. I think they take it 24-18. Then we get Georgia Tech. They started off their season hot, taking on North Carolina. Georgia Tech favored by 4 in this one. I think Georgia Tech dominates. We've seen back-to-back weeks North Carolina just get disposed of on the football field. James Madison, then Duke, then last week. They just get killed once again. I just think North Carolina doesn't have the juice, the defense to get it done. North Carolina loses this game pretty handily. Georgia Tech takes it 38-24. Then the Red River rivalry is back. The number 1 team in the nation, the Texas Longhorns, favored by 14.5 points in this one, take on number 18 Oklahoma. And I think Oklahoma is taking a little bit of disrespect on this one. I think Texas is a much better team than Oklahoma is, but by more than two touchdowns, I think that's a little bit too much. Oklahoma's defense is one of the better defenses in the country. They've played some tough opponents. Their offense has been able to step up when they need to, and the Red River rivalry always gets these teams doing something crazy. Maybe we get a crazy upset happen in this one. I don't quite see that happening, but I definitely think this game stays very close until the end. Texas wins 31-21. Then Penn State, the number 4 team in the nation. Crazy Penn State at number 4 there. Favored by 3.5, traveling across the country to take on USC. That is, again, a tough ask. We saw Miami struggle with a cross-country trip, but USC has some weaknesses. It's weaknesses that have been exploited by teams like Wisconsin, by teams like Michigan. We talked about it earlier on in this segment. This is a team that can be beaten, and I think Penn State is on a roll. Coming off of a bye here, this is a team that I just think is better than USC. USC has got to go through some growing pains after losing a Heisman caliber quarterback. They're going through a whole shift of philosophy now. I don't think USC is going to be able to handle Penn State. Penn State wins 33-24. Then we have Cal traveling to undefeated number 22 Pitt. Pitt favored by 3 points at home in this one. Cal coming off of a near win against a top 5 team in the nation in Miami. Miami obviously comes back from 25 points down. That was a crazy comeback from them, and Cal can't have that letdown again. But I think Cal has shown that they are a team that can't be messed with. This is a really good Cal team, and honestly, I think Pitt is a little bit of a fraudulent one. They've come back from a couple of big deficits. They haven't played their best football in every single game, and I think there's at least 3 teams that are better than them that aren't ranked. I don't think Pitt should be ranked right now. I think Cal takes care of this one. Close game. Cal wins 34-30. Then we have Louisville, who's lost 2 straight games, are reeling. This is a must-win game for them. Favored by 7.5 points, taking on the Virginia Cavaliers in Charlottesville, Virginia. Virginia's been a surprisingly solid team. I've bet against them a lot this year, at least when we do these game picks, and they've won a lot of these games. Virginia, again, a solid team. They deserve some credit for what they've done, but Louisville's offense is something different than what they've run across so far. Louisville taking tough losses in back-to-back weeks. I think they get this one in a must-win, win 40-30. And this is an interesting one coming up. Arizona taking on number 14 BYU. BYU, who's looked really solid. They beat a team in Kansas State who absolutely demolished Arizona earlier on in the season. BYU, I think, is a good team. I think Arizona's a good team as well with that offense. Any given night, they can go out and they can put up 60 points with the offense that they have. The defense, I'm a little more concerned about, and I think regardless of how good that offense is, regardless of how good T-Mac is, I think Arizona's not going to have enough to hold off BYU. BYU wins 35-31. Vanderbilt taking on Kentucky off of their huge win versus Alabama. And I don't want to say it's a letdown game. Kentucky's favored by 12.5 points. Diego Pavia is going to keep this within 1 possession. That I can absolutely guarantee. I think this is 100% a 1-possession game. So I think 12.5 is way too much. But I think Vanderbilt coming off of that win, their first win against an AP top 5 opponent in school history, I think for sure this is a little bit of a letdown game for them. I think we take Vanderbilt to lose, but in close one, 27-25. Iowa State, the number 11 team in the nation, favored by 3 points, taking on a West Virginia team that has gotten a couple tough breaks. They lose a tight one to Pitt earlier on in the season, now ranked. They lose one to Penn State, now a number 4 team in the nation. Their losses have, grown to look pretty solid so far. West Virginia, a good football team. This is not going to be an easy game for Iowa State, but I trust that defense enough that I think they're going to be able to squeak by. I think 3 points is close. I'm taking Iowa State to win 23-21. Syracuse favored by 3 points, traveling to NC State. I'm going to keep this one brief. NC State's been awful. NC State has been just really bad at football this year. I don't believe in this program. Syracuse, on the other hand, has looked really good almost every single week. Their one loss was on a walk-off field goal to a solid Stanford team. I think Syracuse takes this one pretty easy, 45-20. Then number 18, Kansas State, traveling to Colorado. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime has got his guys going. They're 4-1. They've got a path to the playoffs, especially if they can pull off this upset and win this game. Kansas State is a team that I think has been up and down, a little bit inconsistent. When they go up against a team like a Tulane, they've looked bad. They looked bad earlier on in the season in their big loss to BYU. I think Colorado takes this game in a close one, 34-30. That offense is going to be too much for that K-State defense to handle. But now on to the two biggest games of the week, the ranked versus ranked, starting off in Ole Miss. Ole Miss favored by 3.5 points, the number 9 team in the nation, traveling to Death Valley to take on the number 13 LSU Tigers. And I think the location of this one makes all the difference. Ole Miss, a really good team, but going down to play in Death Valley at night, that's just a tough look. Ole Miss coming off of a big win, one they needed really badly. I think LSU is a good team. I really do think they're a good team, and I think these two teams are a lot closer than a lot of people think. Ole Miss favored by 3.5. I think since it's at home for LSU, they get this win. Huge win for their program, shoots them back up into playoff contention. They win 36-29. And then the game of the week, the game of the season, the last one on our list here today. Number 2, Ohio State, favored by 3 points, traveling to Oregon. And that's a really important thing. Number 3, Oregon are hosting in this one. And Oregon has looked a lot better since week 2. They've started to get their stuff together. They're starting to click at the right time, and they are ready for this matchup. They've worked all the way back up to number 3 from back down at number 9 earlier on in the season, crawling up because they win games. Dylan Gabriel has looked awesome. Their biggest test of the season so far against Boise State is starting to age pretty solid. Boise State looks like a really good team, potentially could get a top 4 seed in the playoffs if enough of these power conference teams lose. That's one of those things that's not out of the question. I think that's really cool about this new 12-team playoff format there. But besides that, Oregon, again, really efficient. Dylan Gabriel's played awesome. We've seen Ohio State not really play too many great teams. They're coming off of a big win against an Iowa program that I think is solid. Their defense shut them down. Their defense looked good. A week before, they said they hadn't played anybody. They played Michigan State, a team in Michigan State that I think is starting to get a little bit more respect around the country. It's not the most amount of respect. It's still not a great team, but it's a good win. They're ramping up, and they're ready for it. Will Howard has played good football. This is going to be a game of who makes the least amount of mistakes. As much as I want to say it's the Ducks, as much as I want to say the Ducks can pull it off, I think this Ohio State team is the most complete team in the nation. Their defense, their running game, their passing game, they have maybe the best receiver in the nation as well. This Ohio State team is just stacked from top to bottom, and they're built for a national championship. I think Oregon is probably second in there. So this is going to be probably the best game in college football this season. I think this is going to come down to the wire. I think Ohio State takes this one on the road 45-37 in a shootout. This should be a lot of fun, and I cannot wait for college football this weekend. This is a huge weekend in sports, obviously. College football, biggest weekend of the year. NFL, we have some games starting at 9:30, ending at 11 on the East Coast of America here. And then, of course, baseball playoffs continue all weekend. We'll be back on Monday covering all of it. We'll make sure to hit up on the ALCS and the NLCS when we know what those matchups are. We'll break down all the action from this weekend and anything else crazy that happens as well. So make sure you tune back in on Monday. Can't wait to see you guys then. You all have a great weekend, and I will see you same time, same place on Monday. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Let's go.
I feel like it's gonna be a bad day. I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.